I am Tracy Caden, the hilarious hypnotist, and today's episode is going to be about how the mind works. What? Your mind works? Your mind works against you. That's why you can't stop smoking. That's why you can't lose weight. That's why you can't adopt all these healthy habits like exercise and not biting your nails and not pulling your hair and whatever stupid shit you're doing. Yeah, how the mind works. So let's get the basic terminology out of the way. Okay, there's three things that I think about when I am working with somebody. And there's the conscious mind. That's the one that you're listening to me with. There's the unconscious mind. That's the one that's gauging where you're sitting, your atmosphere. Is it too hot? Is it too cold? What's that person in the corner doing? Boy, it's digesting your food. It's running your body. And then there's what hypnotists call the critical factor, which is the barrier between the two. I also call the critical factor the bullshit wall, okay? Because what happens, think of, you got the critical factor in the middle, and then above it you have your conscious mind, and then your unconscious mind is inside. So what happens, somebody says something to you and says, you are beautiful. That comes through your conscious mind. It hits the critical factor, the bullshit wall. And depending on how your critical factor bullshit wall was built, if you agree with it, that you are beautiful, that goes right into your unconscious mind and it makes you feel good. Pretty cool. What happens though, if somebody will say, you are so beautiful, and it hits your bullshit wall and it doesn't agree with your unconscious mind, you kick it out. Interesting how that works. Now let's flip the scenario a little bit. Somebody says, you're ugly, and it hits the critical factor, the bullshit wall. It doesn't agree. Fuck you. I look fine. And it kicks out those words, ugly, off. Now the problem, and this is where people need me, is that something's wrong with that critical factor. Something is wrong with that bullshit wall. Somebody will say, you're ugly. It'll hit that bullshit wall and it'll say, yeah, I am. And it goes right into their unconscious mind. And over time, this builds. It happens enough that your critical factor, your bullshit wall, comes in different shapes and sizes. There's some people that have a really thick critical factor. There's a lot of people that have a thin one, a high wall, a wide wall. The critical factor comes in all different shapes and sizes. But what has to happen, sometimes we have to tear down that critical factor and rebuild it so that it's healthy. So that when someone says you're ugly and it hits that critical factor wall, it bounces out because you've done the work to rebuild that critical factor so it's healthy. And it serves you and it protects you from all the shit that goes on in your life. That's basically how your mind works. What hypnosis does is that we lower that critical factor. We word suggestions with NLP so it bypasses the critical factor in the event we can't get you to relax enough. And then we start to repair that with good, positive suggestions. We help use this to repair your self-esteem, to correct the bad habits, to correct why you started doing the things you're doing that you know are sabotaging your higher self, but you do them anyway. And you can't seem to stop and you don't know why. It's because your unconscious mind is trying to protect you. Your unconscious mind, all it does is protect you, okay? So you learn something when you're young and your unconscious mind says, okay, this must be the way it is. Now, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years later, you know that whatever you're doing is fucking stupid, like smoking, for instance. You know it's going to kill you. You know that it's going to give you lung cancer, and yet you light up and you start smoking again, and you don't know why. Okay, what happens there? There's an unconscious connection that you linked cigarettes to something else inside. Usually in the case of cigarettes, it's acceptance, social acceptance. You want to be cool. Sometimes it has nothing to do with being cool. It's an excuse to get the fuck away from the people in your life. I've seen both, but that's what it is. It's a skill that you've used to protect yourself, to survive. And now it doesn't work anymore. It's like it's an old operating system on your computer. It's 20 years outdated, but for whatever reason, you just haven't installed new software. Hypnosis is that new software. We go back in there, we kind of keep the best of you and let go of the rest of you. And then we give you new operating systems to work from. That is what I do. And it is amazing to see the changes in people's lives. And it's simple, but it's not simple. The simple part is recognizing what it is. The hard part is figuring out how can we change it quickly and effectively. I don't want to poo-poo therapy, but I find it odd that there's more mental illness than there's ever been before. There's more counselors than there's ever been before. What's the correlation? I don't know. I don't even want to guess, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most therapy techniques are not as effective as they could be, or people don't learn as many ways as they need to for all the people out there to change hearts and change minds and to change behaviors. What I do as a hypnotherapist, I feel that my clients are whole and perfect. I feel that when they were born, they were a clean slate, and then shit happened. And some of the shit was great, and some of the shit was not so great. And we got to fix the not so great shit so that they can be great people, and so that they can become the next best person, that next best version of themselves in their life. That's kind of my view about how I work with people. Everybody's broken in their own way, including myself. But to me, that's how the light shines through. That's what makes you unique. That's what makes you interesting. But we want to keep all that, but we just want to take the pain out of whatever made you broken. And a lot of what I do is through techniques called reframing. Reframing is taking whatever your memory is and having you look at it from a different perspective. And usually when you step back far enough from that memory, you see things that you didn't remember when you were in that moment at the time it happened. And that's what I do as a hypnotist. I have them take a step back and look at the whole thing. And then one of my gifts, I should say, as a hypnotist, is that I start to see the patterns. I start to connect the dots. I start to see where the shit happens over and over and over, but it comes out in a different form. It comes out in a different way. One of my clients, for instance, came from an abusive father. Horrible abuse. Horrible story that went with it. He got out of that house. He went on with his life, ended up getting a college scholarship, and then met a girl. And let me just back up that my client is Black. The girl that he met is white. And he's in my office and he's telling me about this relationship, and it is not a healthy relationship at all. There is nothing healthy about this relationship. And I finally asked him the question, if your girlfriend was somebody from your past, who would it be? And he thought about it for a moment and he goes, oh my God, she's my father. And he never saw it because this was abuse that came in a different age, came in a different stage of his life. It came from a different gender. It came from a different race, but the pattern of abuse was there. That's the stuff that I like to find. That's the stuff that I uncover. And once you know what your patterns are, you can see them. And once you see them, then you can start to stop them and turn your life so that it goes in a positive direction that empowers you instead of in a way that disempowers you. This is all little different things about how the mind works. And sometimes I get to use these all in a session. Sometimes I don't get to use any of these in a session because the session goes in a whole different way than even I expected. One thing that I've noticed in all my sessions is that the reason why they come to you is not the issue. It is the final straw when they realize they need to fix something, that there is a problem, and they just don't know how to dig themselves out of the hole that they've either fallen in or gotten themselves in some cases. So this is what I do. I help people step back, see the patterns, and then I help them rewrite the pattern so that they can move on to this next best version of their life. They're no longer stuck in the mud. They're no longer being held back by these disempowering beliefs, by these stupid behaviors that keep them trapped. There you go.